One hears predictions that Russia is on its last gasp, and that if only Trump were to put sanctions on this company, or to go after the shadow fleet, or to put tariffs on countries that buy Russian oil, then the Russian economy is going to collapse. I don't buy it. I think that Russia is now on a war footing. I think that the Russian economy has weathered the sanctions. I think the Russians can generally get what they need by dealing with countries with whom they've established new trading relationships since the sanctions first kicked in 2014 and then again in 2022. And so I don't think that we will stop Russian aggression against Ukraine by getting the Russians to say, oh, it hurts too much. Our economy is stumbling. We're ready to stop. I think Putin is prepared to make the domestic economic sacrifices necessary to keep this war going. And as a consequence, I think there's only one way to get the Russians to stop, and that's to stop them. And that means giving Ukrainians the economic and military assistance that they need to shut down Russian aggression. I think that Putin will, in the end of the day, agree to a diplomatic end to this war, but only if he believes that Russian forces are going to get have gotten as far as they are going to get. And we're not there yet. I think Putin believes that he can win. I think Putin believes that time is on his side. And that's why it is so important for Trump to step up to the plate and say to Putin, time is not on your side. We are prepared to stand by Ukraine. We are standing shoulder to shoulder with European allies to give Ukraine what it needs to defend itself.
I would like to expand our discussion about sanctions. Trump has agreed the Gramm-Blumenthal sanction bill against those who buy Russian oil. First of all, is it intimidation or real intention? And what implications would have new sanctions for China, India, and Brazil? How they would circumvent these sanctions, and what Russia is going to do under such circumstances?
Well, I don't think we're going to see those kinds of sanctions implemented. Trump has really only moved ahead in one case, and that is India, where he increased sanctions against India for buying Russian oil. And that is in part, and in fact, I would say mainly, because he was in a spat with Prime Minister Modi, because Modi stood up to him. And because Modi didn't agree with Trump that he ended the war between India and Pakistan, didn't make a deal with Trump on trade, and wasn't taking the knee, if you will, as others did. Trump wants a trade deal with China. Trump, I think, is very focused on setting the ground for a visit to China. We're hearing it will be in April, and getting a breakthrough on trade. And as a consequence, I really don't believe that we're going to see these high towering levels of tariffs on China because China buys Russian oil. So it's for this reason, among others, that I don't believe that economic sanctions are the answer. In the end of the day, Putin will stop when he is stopped, and that's much more about aiding Ukraine than it is about sanctioning Russia.
What is the most important for Trump right now in terms of domestic policy and foreign affairs? I mean, where is his real focus on in view of the midterm elections?
Trump is in trouble. Trump has delivered really on only one main campaign promise, and that is on his immigration platform, where he said he was going to shut down the southern border and engage in massive deportation. and he's generally delivered. And on a daily basis now, you pick up the newspaper, you turn on the television, and you see pictures of agents rounding up immigrants, arresting immigrants, deporting them all over the place. And in that sense, he did what he promised he would do, but it's not going over well. The deportation campaign is really quite inhumane and shocking, and public opinion polls are showing that roughly 2/3 of the American public doesn't support Trump's immigration policy. And it is causing very significant disruptions to the labor supply. Why? Because undocumented migrants work in construction, in hospitality, restaurants and hotels, in food processing, in gardening, in agriculture. People are having a hard time finding workers. People aren't going to work because they're afraid if they go out on the street, they're going to get arrested. So this is very disruptive. And then on the other main promise, affordability, Trump has taken steps that are actually making economic insecurity worse. In particular, the tariffs, where you see rising costs, particularly in grocery stores. And Trump said, well, everybody is going to move to the United States. All these companies are going to come back and they're going to build things here because they don't want to get hit with tariffs. And the United States will be the manufacturing powerhouse of the world again. Not happening. Since Trump took office, around 50,000 manufacturing jobs have disappeared. And so average working Americans don't get their jobs back on the production line. The cost of living keeps going up. They are very unhappy. And that's precisely why you're seeing Trump's support in public opinion go down, and why Republican members of Congress, just in the last few weeks, have really begun to push back and move away from him. I would say we're at a bit of a tipping point in the Trump presidency, in which his ability to dominate American politics has cracked, and in which the Democrats are, I would say, in decent shape heading into the midterms.
Yeah, and actually, what about foreign affairs?
In foreign affairs, I would say kind of mixed. Is Trump on shaky ground with his voter base? Yes. Because he promised an America first foreign policy. He promised that we'd spend more time solving problems at home rather than solving problems abroad. He's talked about the Monroe Doctrine and the United States no longer being the atlas of the world as it was put in the national security strategy. Well, yeah, there is this new Monroe Doctrine, but U.S. is also still playing the world's policeman. The U.S. has not just gone in and toppled Maduro, but it's carried out airstrikes in Iran, in Iraq, in Syria, in Yemen, in Somalia, in Nigeria. There are still 80,000 U.S. troops in Europe, tens of thousands of American troops in Japan and South Korea, U.S. troops on station in hundreds of bases around the world. And I don't think that the base is very happy about this. I'm guessing that J.D. Vance, who in some ways represents the neo-isolationist quadrant within the Trump administration, I don't think he was very happy about going into Venezuela. What if Venezuela starts going in an unstable direction? What if the United States needs to put boots on the ground? And so I think on foreign policy, it's a very mixed picture. And I give Trump credit for trying to be the peacemaker. And he did get a ceasefire of sorts in Gaza, even though the violence continues. He's trying his best to end the war in Ukraine, although I think he has misread Putin and doesn't understand the ideological ambitions that drive Putin. So in some ways, I would say his foreign policy rhetorically is a huge break. But in reality, it isn't all that different from what we've seen before. The big caveat is Greenland. Were he to go into Greenland, I think it really would be a historic breakpoint in America's relationship with its allies.
If I understood you correctly, you tend to think that Republicans don't have many chances to win midterm elections.
You know, I would be more cautious than that. It's going to be tight. There are redistricting efforts afoot. Republicans are now thinking that maybe they need to pass a bill to extend healthcare subsidies because they're concerned that the bill that's facing many Americans, the healthcare bill, is really going to turn Republican voters away from the administration alongside this affordability crisis that I talked about. So things are a bit up in the air. But I do think if you look at public opinion polls, if you look at the decisive victories that Democratic candidates won in the governor elections in Virginia and New Jersey, the Democrats are in pretty good shape to take back the House. But we're in a very fluid and uncertain period in American politics, and anything could happen between now and the elections in the fall.